Thank you for joining us, Miss Horton.
Sure.
Or should I call you? Do you have a specific title I should be calling you?
You can call me Diane.
Diane. Well, Diane, we're pleased to have you today. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, we've got several students, and Miss Pendergrass is one of our teachers. And I'll just let you get started. Thank you.
Okay. So it was my understanding that I'm going to talk about what I do today. Nathan gave me some instructions, and then I would love if we have Q&A at the end. That would make my morning.
Yeah.
And if not, we'll roll with that too.
Yes, and if you have any questions, students or Miss Pendergrass,
Yes.
please ask, or at least put them in the chat. Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful for the invitation. So thank you, Nathan, for inviting me to participate with this event. But like Nathan said, my name's Dianne Horton, and I serve as the manager for Chaplaincy and Clinical Ministries at Wake Forest Baptist Health Lexington Medical Center. What a mouthful. So I was wondering, I wish I could see the students because I'm interested to know how many folks even know what a chaplain is. And the chat box function is fine too. But maybe just a poll real quick of how many people know what a chaplain is, what chaplains do. Anything happening in the chat box, Nathan?
Not yet. And you guys are welcome to unmute and talk. Oh, Nakia doesn't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't it a teacher of religious functions? A teacher?
I heard a teacher. The comment before that I didn't quite catch.
Oh, a religious teacher.
There is some of that, yes. Good answer.
Ms. Horton, if you want to see as they talk, if you're at the top, if you'll put your screen in gallery view, and you can see everyone if you'd like to see
I've got it like that, but I don't think they're showing their faces.
Oh, right. You want to explain that, Mr. Tongo?
Yes, our students, they don't usually show their faces and that's been okay. We'd love to see them. We really would, but most of the time in our live classes, they have not been showing their faces, very seldom. It's become the norm for our students. So, but hey, I'm glad they're in the chat box and they're talking to us. So that's
very good. I'm happy they are here with us today too. And I get not wanting to show your face all the time. There are meetings that I'm in and I choose not to show mine some days. It's okay. But those were good answers. So yes, a chaplain, the easy way for me to explain it is it's like being a pastor. I think that's a more familiar term for people. But instead of pastoring at a church, I'm in the hospital setting. Although as a chaplain, part of my training is being a licensed and ordained minister. So I do also work in a church, but I'm here today to talk about chaplaincy. So some of the things that I get to do on a normal day for chaplain is a wide variety. So the teaching part that was spoken of, I do get to do teaching inside the hospital and outside the hospital. It's not always what we would categorize as religious, maybe more so spiritual. I do a lot of talks about mindfulness, stress relief, self-care, taking care of yourself, being in touch with that spiritual component of ourselves. You know, we are made up of many different aspects, and our spiritual nature is one aspect of ourselves. So just like we take care of our physical health, we take care of our spiritual health and our mental health. So sometimes I dabble in a little bit of all of those different pieces of our holistic care for the topics that I talk about.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, y'all jump in.
Okay. Whenever you're giving these talks, I'm sure they're very important in a hospital. Is this for employees of the hospital, or is this for patients and their families? How does that work?
Both.
Okay.
So when I mentioned my job has a big variety of things I get to do. So I get to work with the patients, and that's in the inpatient environment as well as outpatient. So for example, outpatient, patients that come in for their cardiac rehab, if they've had heart surgery, heart issues, and their doctor has them now doing cardiac rehab, working on their heart or pulmonary rehab. I do a lot of work with those patients on the topic of stress management, because stress impacts our hearts, and just giving suggestions of ways to handle stress, how to address stress. We can try to avoid stress, but one of the things I in the teaching that I do is, stress is one of the things in life we have to accept. It's always going to be here. Some people, change doesn't stress them out, and for others, change really stresses them. So all of us have those stress factors, and it's just how do we deal with it and how do we recognize it. Also, I talk a lot about resilience. So that's been a hot topic in the midst of COVID. Practicing what I preach lately has been my challenge. But how do you keep going in the midst of challenging times? And what is it that feeds your soul to the point that you can keep going and persevere? Did that answer your question, Nathan?
Yes, ma'am, it sure did. We may actually need you to talk to all the teachers.
I would love to. But I think, so you asked me about who teach. So that's an outpatient example. And an inpatient example is actually being in the room with patients. So that's more of a one-on-one type of conversation. And then I do work with staff quite a bit. I would say right now, staff more so, trying to help them get through the COVID challenging times. And then we also do have different groups, community groups, and do some work there as well. I would say currently my role is a lot of administrative work though. So one of my lessons, so this is a note, if any students are taking notes, write this down. You never stop learning. So when you graduate, that's not the end of it. You don't get to punch the clock and say you're done. You never stop learning. So one of my lessons that I'm learning currently is the fact that ministry can happen in administration. Even the days that I'm here in the office working on policies and all of that, my commitment to justice and equity and fairness and inclusion, all of that ministerial training informs decision-making on policies. I'm trying to think of some more examples of what I do. I think a lot of people just find it interesting, all the different things that chaplains do. And so on our job descriptions, teachers, you may have the same thing. There's the very last bullet point, says other duties as assigned. I don't know if that rings a bell with y'all, but that last little tagline sometimes becomes the biggest piece of the job.
It does, because I think that is exactly in the teacher's description, job description, and other duties as assigned, which ends up being most of them. Ms. Pendergrass asked a good question, which I'd like for you to definitely talk about is what type of education does your job require, and maybe what path did you take to get where you're at?
Thank you, Ms. Pendergrass. That's a great question. Yes. So the academic training for chaplain, and I'll speak from my position as a board certified chaplain, okay, had my undergraduate degree, my particular degree, and that can vary for different chaplains, but my undergrad, I majored in sociology and I minored in religion. And then I went to divinity school Some people call it seminary. And in divinity school is 3 years. So after that, I completed the Master's of Divinity degree. In the path of becoming a chaplain, you also complete clinical pastoral education. And that is set up almost to mimic the path of a doctor. So I had to do a clinical internship, and then I had to complete a clinical residency. And all that was before getting like a real job. So I did 2 years of residency. You can stop after 1 year residency, but I chose to do 2 years, and I did a specialty. My second year residency, I worked with adult behavioral health, ED, which is trauma, and palliative care, end of life. And I chose those because I felt like that covered a wide variety of patient encounters that would continue throughout the trajectory and the path of being a chaplain in a hospital. And those are 3 different areas I'm really passionate about and fuels me, drives me. Did you have to have a high school diploma before beginning? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes. That might be very important for this group to hear, right? Yes, I had to finish high school. Yes. I am a proud T.W. Josie Eagle out of Augusta, Georgia. I bleed gold and green. My motto was knowledge is power. Oh, yes. So is everybody on here high school students, or do we have some middle school too? Everybody's high school? Treasure these years. There's one says middle. All right.
I'm middle, but I'm supposed to be in high school.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. High school years, treasure them. Treasure them, treasure them, treasure them. There will be some, I know things are different now. I will say that probably was the best 4 years of my life in many ways. And I know that times are different, and especially now with COVID, this might not be anybody's best time of life. So we bleed orange and blue, going pro. I have heard about going pro. Yes.
That's good. You heard it. That's great.
I have heard about that.
Now, but whenever did you get go to a 4-year college before you went to the divinity school?
I did. So I went to Salem College, and then I went to Wake Forest University for divinity school. Okay. And I'm going to be very transparent and share a very open and honest story, okay? Because sometimes the name of those 2 schools can give a connotation that doesn't really sit well with me. Both of them are private institutions, and they're known to be wealthy institutions. I am neither. I do not identify as elite in any way. I was blessed and I was fortunate that doors were open for me. I did not go to college right after high school. I graduated high school. I started college at Augusta University, which back then was Augusta College, and they've changed names 100 times since probably. And I finished 3 years, and some things in life just happened. And I will use this time to also tell you all that God has a plan for each and every one of you. And sometimes that plan doesn't align with your plan. If my plan had worked out, I'd be sitting where Mr. Tongo and Miss Pendergrass are right now. I wanted to be a high school teacher. I wanted to teach social studies, and my part-time job was going to be real estate. And that was my plan. And I had it all laid out. But a gentleman approached me one day that became my husband. And 30 years later, here I am. And we've been together 35, married 30. But when I met him, he was working and his job transferred up here to North Carolina. And I followed, and I postponed my education, my secondary education, my college education. and children came along and life started happening. So my college did not happen for me until later. So I went to Salem College as a grown woman, married, 2 kids, a dog, a house, and working full time. But I made it. And I made it through there, and I didn't have a clue about a chaplain, being an introvert. I could not imagine myself being a preacher, a minister, or a chaplain until a professor that cared and recognized something in me, pulled me to the side and said, have you thought about? And we had a long conversation one night after class, because all my classes were at night. I worked all day and went to school at night. And we had that conversation, and he told me where to apply. And I applied to Wake Forest University Divinity School, and another door opened. And here I am after many years. Yeah.
It's amazing how those doors just sort of open in life.
They do, doors open. It's important to have mentors. Don't be afraid to work with your teachers. They are there to help you. They have your best interest in mind because they want to see you succeed and be successful in life. So, yeah. I'm gonna jump back to where I was talking about the clinical training. So when I talk about that, that can kind of seem different type of language too than what you just every day. So clinical pastoral education is when you're in a hospital and you're assigned units, and units in the hospital could be like, you know, where the heart patients are, cancer patients are, behavioral health patients. Every unit in a hospital is specific to a certain patient population and what their diagnosis is, what health conditions they're dealing with. That is required to become a board certified chaplain. So completing that residency, I had to do that. Then the next step, which is also back to Ms. Pendergrass's question about academic and educational training, then you have to prepare for board certification, which means you start writing. And that was the old book I've just pulled out. So you end up with a big notebook of all your writing materials about what your theology is. And theology simply means your thoughts on God. Okay. And there is no right or wrong answer on that question. I have to write about my pastoral care experiences with my patients, but maintain confidentiality. So you change names, and we write about that and how our skills show up. So our skills in caring, in maintaining boundaries, in our professionalism. And we also had to write a lot of essays on different topics. Yes, essays, Ms. Pendergrass, that had to address every competency that's identified by Association of Professional Chaplains. So it's like 30. So you end up with a really big notebook after you write all of that. You submit it to the committee, they read it, they come back with a presenter's report of telling you what you have met and what you have not met. And what you do not meet in writing, you have the opportunity to meet when you are presented to a committee. And then you sit before a committee and you discuss your field and your expertise. And then at the end of that, you are approved or not. And then that's a whole process. So it's a long road, but you learn so much through it. You learn so much through it to better equip you. And along all of that process, it's the same philosophy of what I just said about teachers. People want to help you succeed in life. And you have to look for the positive and take the positive out of those experiences. And sometimes experiences do hurt. You know, I have mentored people that did not pass committee on the first try, and they have to go the second and the third time. Yeah. I saw some questions pop up, but I wasn't able to read and talk.
Miss Pendergrass was just I think she wanted to emphasize that you had to write, because that's one of those things that our
Yes.
students, yes,
That's how
writing,
you communicate your thoughts.
that is a perfect way of putting it. And she also said it sounds like you had to learn many things in and out of your discipline.
What, Ms. Pendergrass, what would you identify as out of my discipline?
When you were once you left the high school and went into colleges, you still had to take those basic English and math and science.
Yes, definitely so. You have to get that foundation.
So you're saying that the foundations are these basic classes that we're getting now in the regular schools. We have to come to the secondary with foundations.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
I sure will. So all of those basic courses, that's like your foundation that holds you. And then along that path, you get the opportunity to pick out what stimulates you, where's your passion, what gets your brain ticking that you keep thinking about a certain subject. Excuse me. And then once you get to college, when you identify a major, that major should align with what that passion is for you. Because I'll be out there, and probably what Ms. Pendergrass is getting at is there's probably classes you don't like. There were classes I didn't like. When I got to high school and I looked at that big chart in the chemistry classroom, it scared me to death. Looking back, I was like, I should not have been intimidated by that chart. And had I not been, I might have been doing something else, But so don't be intimidated by things. Take it on and learn all you can. But yeah, I still, to this day, I think about that. I was like, why did that chart intimidate me so much? But it did, and that kind of deterred me. Because before that, I had thought, yeah, I'd love to be like a doctor or something. But when I saw that chart, I was like, I don't know about that. And math, I know, is a big one too. A lot of people are afraid of math. It's a foundational course. Learn it, do it, and your time will come to discover your passion and what you want to explore deeper. Let me see. I don't know if these are for me or if they're talking to each other. People work better without distractions.
That's true. That was good. Hey, that was great advice, Dianne, because whenever I had a similar, you went to Wake Forest for divinity school, and what's funny is whenever I was a kid in high school, I did not apply to Wake Forest because I had one of my mentors in high school. She was my biology teacher, and she was a wonderful lady, and she wanted me to apply to Wake Forest, and I was worried about how much it cost because I didn't have any money, and she was trying to encourage me to go. And this sounds awful, but you have emphasized writing, and I would just want to bring this up. I did not fill out that Wake Forest application because I had to write an essay, and I let that intimidate me. And God put me where I need to be in life, but who knows where I would have been if I hadn't allowed that to intimidate me.
Right. And I think I'll also share too, when I say you keep learning. So I've been working full-time as a professional chaplain with Wake Forest Baptist Health for 10 years. I've been here on the Lexington campus for 5. I transferred from the big academic medical center in Winston to the smaller community hospital here in Lexington. And throughout these 10 years, I've debated, like, I want to go back and get a doctorate. I want to go back and get my doctorate. And finally, all the stars aligned and it's worked out. So I just recently started working on the doctorate of ministry this past fall. So I'm on my Christmas break, holiday break for that program. And so back to what Ms. Pendergrass is stressing about writing, that's all I've done since August. Both classes, it is papers, writing about papers. Writing papers and writing about various books and articles and my own process and my own experiences. So that writing doesn't stop.
I have a question. I was just sort of curious, and this might be a little off topic, but is it necessary whenever you go into chaplaincy, is it necessary to be a Christian, or could you be Muslim and become a chaplain? I wasn't sure.
Thank you for that. Sometimes I forget that everybody's not talking my language, right? But so as a chaplain, I had to have interfaith training. So I identify as Christian. My home church is a Baptist church who is aligned with the National Baptist Convention. But not all chaplains are Christian. So Christians come from different faiths, different beliefs, different denominations. So I would say, and I'm not trying to stereotype, chaplains often have a broader perspective than congregational pastors, okay? Because it's been part of our training. And I also want to be very honest, because I like to share this information when I get a chance to. Chaplaincy and ministry has a rare phenomenon about it. You can be academically trained and you cannot be academically trained, okay? So you can have a pastor in a church, depending on the denomination. And denomination, when I say denomination, that means like Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, UCC, that the categories within Christianity. Depending on denominational churches and what their requirements are. Some churches can have a pastor that does not have the academic or the theological training. Okay. Chaplains, for example, can be a volunteer chaplain and not have the amount of training that I've had. And in your more rural areas, it's even possible and different, I'll get to that in a minute. But in more rural areas, there's also for some chaplains, maybe not to have completed this path of training. So the thought that just jumped in my mind, another thing I like to share too, chaplains can work in a variety of settings. So if anybody's wondering about this, there are chaplains in hospitals, chaplains in prisons, chaplains in the corporate arena, chaplains in factories, chaplains on colleges and universities, chaplains that work for hospice. And it's my understanding, like NASCAR, they even have their own chaplain. So that kind of falls up under the corporate arena. So some big corporations have chaplains. Tyson, the chicken place in Wilkesboro, they have chaplains. So the field of chaplaincy is broad. It doesn't have to be just a hospital.
I even understand the military, all the branches of the military have chaplains.
Yes, thank you. I left that one off. That's huge. That's huge.
I really had no idea it was this, that chaplaincy was this broad, really.
Yes, it is. It is. Um, do firefighters have one? Sometimes firefighters will have a volunteer chaplain, where it will be like a local pastor in the community. However, another one I left off, which that question just reminded me, police departments have chaplains. And again, depending on what the job requirements are, those chaplains may have the academic, theological, clinical training, or some police departments just get a pastor from the local community, and that's who they utilize and assign as their chaplain.
This is very good information. So, like, if a student is interested in chaplaincy, feels called to do it, it would go to get a 4-year degree. Do you have any recommendation on a major and 4-year degree?
I'll say for me, so social justice is one of my my passions. Okay, I strive for social justice. That's what keeps me going. Sociology was very helpful to me. I also, when I was in college at Salem, you did not have to have a minor. So here's another life lesson I'll share. At that time, even being at that advanced age, I wanted to get that piece of paper and go on about my business. I didn't have to have a minor, so I wasn't going to do a minor. I was majoring in sociology, had enough of transfer credits. Let's get it done. But take time in life to explore. When you don't explore your options, you are going to miss out every time. Okay. So back to that, stay open, keep your mind open to opportunities. So it was actually a professor that told me I did well in a religion class, because at Salem, like I said, it's a private school. It's inclined to the Moravian culture because it was founded by Moravians. It sits in the heart of Old Salem, around all the Moravian history. The school, since has that religious feel to it, you have to take one religious course. It's a requirement. So I took that one course, and it could be any class I wanted. I picked the one that sounded interesting, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Again, back to what I said earlier about your thoughts and your thinking about God, about creator, about a higher being. Your thoughts are your thoughts, and don't let anyone discount them. Okay. The church that I was raised up in was pretty conservative. My thoughts didn't quite, even as a child, my inner nature was, this doesn't sit well with me. When I got to Salem College and I'm in a classroom, those thoughts that I thought might be a little off kilter because the old folks back in the day didn't think like that. Guess what? I wasn't the only one that thought like that. I had a professor and a class and classmates that thought broader too. And that was so affirming for me and so validating. And it was that professor that said, you really do well, and I can tell you put a lot of thought into, theology. Why don't you minor in it or major in it? So I went to my advisor. I was like, put it on pen and paper. What classes, what semester, and how am I going to do this? How can I add more work? and it worked out. I learned a lot. It put me on the trajectory to get me where I am today. Um, so just, you got to stay open. You have to stay open. But back to the question about what uh, school, what majors, like I said, sociology was really good. Psychology would be really good as well. But when I was in divinity school, I'll say my classmates in divinity school came from a wide variety of backgrounds. For a lot of them, it was second career. They had worked many years in business, and then they felt the urge, the call to go to divinity school, and they followed that and went there. So divinity school, the students there came from a variety of backgrounds. And I'll say also divinity school, not all students there wanted to be chaplains, and not all of them wanted to be pastors. A lot of divinity school students go on to work in nonprofit leadership. So that's another option. And in a lot of ways, that's a ministry.
Nakia had a good question, and that sort of
Okay.
goes even a little bit further. Wanted to know, do you have to have a 4-year degree to do this? And then that sort of piggybacks in, do you need the divinity, the Masters of Divinity, and to become a chaplain? You know, is all that a requirement in the process?
Okay. In order to go to divinity school, yes, you need that 4-year degree. Okay. So that's completing undergraduate and then moving on to graduate. So that 4-year degree is required. You could do 2 years at community college and then do your last 2 at a 4-year institution and then go to divinity school. That's one option. For as being a chaplain, I would say we're currently in the process. I'll say even here at Lexington Medical Center, my staffing model that I utilize is the chaplains that do on calls, which means they're on call for a 24-hour period, and for any calls that come in day or night by phone for a need, they respond to it. They are here as a contract person. So they're not a hospital employee, but we give them a contract to provide a service. But even with those people, we prefer that they have at least 1 unit of that clinical pastoral education. Okay. There are some hospitals, although I would say it's becoming less and less, that will use volunteer chaplains. And those volunteer chaplains may not necessarily be required to have this full amount of training. But I think it's also important to mention that volunteers do not get paid. Okay. So if you want a career in chaplaincy and you want your paycheck, you want to earn your way in life as a chaplain, you need to, you gotta put the work in. Put the work in.
That's great. Miss Pendergrass had a good question. Do y'all offer internships?
Yes, so I've done, let me see how to get it out right here. I've completed all of my training with Wake Forest Baptist Health. So when I did my internship the summer after my first year of divinity school. And remember, I said that's 3 years. So I completed my first year of classes, and then that summer, I spent that summer doing an internship in Winston-Salem at Baptist Hospital. So my internship was not paid, but I was working 40+ hours a week all summer. And that was part of the requirement. went back, finished 2 years of divinity school, then made my application for the residency, and I completed that at Wake Forest Baptist Health. And then a door opened and a job became available when I completed my residency. And then that's how I've stayed here. Any hospital that offers the clinical pastoral education, and we just refer to it as CPE, are your big academic medical centers. So normally if a hospital is aligned with a medical school, they also have the pastoral school. So Wake Forest has medical school and they have the CPE program. Duke has one, Chapel Hill. So your bigger hospitals. Now, Lexington Medical Center is part of the Wake Forest Baptist Health System. You can do an internship and complete your clinical requirements here.
Very good. We've been talking quite a while. This has been interesting.
Yeah, this is rolling right along.
I'm glad you you came offered to do this. I really appreciate it.
I'll say too, you asked me earlier, Nathan, about sharing screens or having PowerPoints. And in a lot of things I do that. But in talking about what a chaplain does, I'd like to emulate what we do. And we do a lot of talking. So, and building relationships and earning trust. That's a great part of what we do. And that is always done in a conversational approach. You can't get to know me if I'm flipping screens of a PowerPoint. And I'm not discrediting a PowerPoint because we use that as an educational tool and I use it too. But when I want to tell you what a chaplain does, I also want to show you what a chaplain does.
I think that's one of the difficult things about being a teacher during this pandemic is we, you know, are developing those relationships with our kids and earning their trust, and it's very difficult to do it.
It takes time.
Seems like we do all the talking.
Yes.
Tara has a question. Tara, would you like to unmute and ask?
What is your job?
What is my job?
Yes.
Okay.
Like the title, I guess.
The title of it. So yeah, my title is, get ready to give this mouthful again.
I'm sorry, Tara was, she came in about 5 minutes late. So
okay, that's fine. Yeah. It's manager for chaplaincy and clinical ministries at Wake Forest Baptist Health, Lexington Medical Center.
Does that even fit on your business card?
I know, like little bitty print, right? And also another part of chaplaincy, because earlier the question was, is it with patients or staff? I also get engaged with the community quite a bit. I mentioned one group we do. We have a caregiver academy where we work with people that are the primary caregiver for their loved ones. So that gets me with the community, which now is Zoom. But I used to be out quite a bit during my work day, out in the community, different meetings, working with community partners and building those relationships and building trust as well. I saw a question about how many chaplains for the entire system or for the local Lexington hospital.
Let's say local Lexington, but for the entire system of these, even the outpatients services that Wake Forest also utilize.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to cheat, Ms. Pendergrass.
So it's always good to have things handy.
It's good to have things handy. And I'm gonna take that back. I'm not cheating. This is called utilizing resources. I gotta remember, I'm in the presence of teachers. I gotta keep it right. So here at Lexington, I'm here full time. We have an administrative assistant, but she is not a chaplain. And then we currently have Look at another resource here. There are 7 chaplain associates. So those 7 chaplains are the ones I mentioned earlier. So they work with me by contract, and they provide the on-call services. Okay, because I am only one person. I can't give this place 24/7, 365, although it feels like it sometimes. But when I leave at the end of the day, if a need arises in the middle of the night, the on-call chaplain responds. Okay, so that's a term that we use a lot in chaplaincy, is on-call, just like doctors are on-call. So that's 7 here at Lexington, and they work in rotation. We basically say, here's the calendar for December. What days are you available? And we work to fill up the calendar so there's no gaps in coverage. Now, for the overall system, which includes Winston-Salem, Lexington, High Point, Davie, and Wilkes. Okay, it includes, I gotta count. It is close to 20. That's full-time chaplains. And then we have those that are residents. And we currently have 8 residents. Okay. So, yeah.
That's impressive. I had no idea. No.
No. And that number will grow by bounds once, if you've been watching the news, once we fully integrate with Atrium Health Care and we all become Atrium Health, then, I mean, they already have a full slate of chaplains as well. And that goes all the way down to Georgia. So yeah, that's a huge system that we're about to become a part of.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate this. I found it
You're
very
welcome.
interesting talking to you. I hope
This will be the best part of my day.
well, good. Tara, you don't have any questions? No. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I don't want to keep Dianne too much longer. All right. Well, thank you, Dianne, for your time. This has been awesome.
Okay. I'm gonna add this tidbit in too, since there were no questions. Nathan, if you have, I'm sure you'll communicate with the students. If you want to share my contact information, please feel free to share that with them. If any of you ever want to just talk to me one-on-one, if you have some questions about it, I would love to talk to you. I like mentoring. So if you want to talk further, and also once you get my contact information, if you have a family member, someone you care about, ever here at the hospital, and look me up, okay? Just say, hey, I was in a class and you talked to me. I'm here to be helpful, okay? So
I appreciate that. I will email your information out to these students too. I will definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Was there another question about talking to a class or something that popped up?
Yes, Miss Pendergrass asked if you'd be able to speak to classes in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That would be really good, especially I think maybe our counseling.
Health sciences.
Yes.
Yeah, and health sciences.
Yes, you're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Because a lot of times chaplaincy doesn't get included in that field, and we are clinically trained too. So yeah, I would love to.
That would be perfect. We've got a new health science teacher that's actually, but she's I will share with her. She's actually just transferring positions with us, but I'm sure she needs to build those resources and relationships too. So I'm sure she'll reach out to you.
Okay, great.
Thank you for that offer, that idea, Miss Pendergrass.
Yeah. The hospital's actually partnering with Lexington City Schools, so we're looking any way we can to partner and be serve as a resource however we can. So, and I'm definitely open to that. This type of setting helps me think that in some small way I did still become the teacher that I wanted to be.
Most definitely.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we appreciate your help and it's been awesome. I really do appreciate it.
Great.
Miss Pendergrass put in the chat. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
again. So
And thank you to you two teachers. I think the rest on the screen are students.
yes.
But I know that you all are going through a whole lot now as teachers and readapting everything that you've ever known to be normal. And so thank you for being there. And to the students, y'all hang in there. You can do it. You can do it. You can get through it. You can make it and do great, great things. I know that the world's going to hear all about you all because you're going to do great things.
Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful weekend.
All right, y'all too. Happy Friday.
Bye, Miss Horton.
Bye-bye.
Bye.